it live in a jungle?
No. Oh.
Is it really fast?
No.
Does it live on the Great Plains of Africa?
No.
Hey!
What is this?
Friends, if you want to watch the super hit movie World War Z 2013 in English, then make sure to like this video. And if you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, we are going to talk about an intense and thrilling zombie action movie called World War Z. We'll explore what this movie is all about, and most importantly, where you can watch it. We'll cover all the interesting facts related to this film that fans would love to know. In today's video, I'll be giving you complete information about the platforms where World War Z is available to stream, whether it's an OTT platform or a satellite TV channel. We will also dive deep into the technical department of the film, talking about its powerful background music, cinematography, editing, and the massive scale of its production. From pre-production to filming and post-production stages, everything will be discussed in detail. I will also tell you about the movie's budget, box office performance, and whether it was a hit or not. On top of that, we'll review the plot of the movie, break down its storyline, and I'll also share a short review of the film. Along with that, we'll discuss the star cast of the movie, the actors' performances, and which character played which role. There will also be some mind-blowing facts you might not know about World War Z. So friends, I request you to watch this video till the very end. So let's begin the video. World War Z 2013. Plot and narrative analysis. Marc Forster's World War Z 2013, based loosely on the novel by Max Brooks, delivers a high-stakes global thriller rooted in the apocalyptic zombie genre. Told through a linear narrative from a third-person perspective, the story follows former United Nations investigator Gerry Lane, played by Brad Pitt, as he races against time to stop a fast-spreading zombie pandemic that threatens to wipe out humanity. Structure and story progression. World War Z follows a conventional narrative arc: setup, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. However, it expands its scope by weaving global perspectives and geopolitical consequences into Gerry Lane's personal journey, effectively merging personal stakes with global catastrophe. Plot breakdown. 1. Opening, establishing normalcy and sudden chaos. The film begins in Philadelphia, where Gerry is seen enjoying time with his wife Karen and 2 daughters. This peaceful beginning quickly spirals into chaos as a mysterious outbreak causes people to transform into violent, hyperfast zombies in a matter of seconds. The city descends into panic, setting the tone for the urgency and unpredictability of the narrative. Key turning point number 1. Gerry and his family are evacuated by a former UN colleague to a Navy fleet off the coast, where he is tasked with uncovering the origin of the outbreak in exchange for his family's safety. 2. Global race against time, rising action. Gerry's journey takes him across the globe. South Korea. He learns that the infected are attracted by sound, and hears about a possible clue in Jerusalem. Jerusalem. The city has built a wall to keep out the infected. However, loud singing by refugees attracts a horde, breaching the defenses. Here, Gerry observes that zombies ignore terminally ill people. Key turning point number 2. This observation sparks Gerry's theory that the infected avoid hosts who are already sick, a potential breakthrough in halting the outbreak. 3. Climax. The WHO facility in Wales. Gerry travels to a World Health Organization research facility in Wales, where he plans to test his theory by injecting himself with a deadly but curable pathogen. A suspenseful infiltration scene follows, with Gerry maneuvering through infected zones to retrieve the pathogen samples. Climactic moment. Gerry injects himself, and the zombies ignore him, proving his theory correct. 4. Resolution, a hopeful countermeasure. With the discovery that a form of camouflage using disease works, humanity gains a fighting chance. The infected can now be evaded by using the pathogen-based vaccine, marking a turning point in the global war against the undead. Gerry is reunited with his family, and the film ends on a hopeful note, although the world is far from healed. Themes and emotional impact. Survival versus humanity. The film explores the ethical dilemmas of survival in an apocalyptic scenario. Gerry represents human empathy and intelligence over brute force. Global unity. Unlike most zombie films confined to small locations, World War Z highlights global cooperation, or lack thereof, in facing shared threats. Sacrifice and family. Gerry's emotional tether to his family fuels his journey, making the narrative not just about saving the world, but also about preserving his humanity. Narrative techniques. Linear timeline. The story is told in chronological order, which maintains tension and urgency throughout. Flashbacks are minimal, keeping the pace steady and intense. Realistic tone. Shot with a documentary-like style in parts, especially in the news footage and chaotic urban scenes, the film creates a grounded, believable world. Global perspective. By jumping between countries, the narrative emphasizes the worldwide scale of the pandemic, enhancing the stakes and deepening the sense of desperation. Conclusion. World War Z delivers a gripping, fast-paced narrative with global stakes and personal emotion at its core. While it sticks to a conventional structure, its international scope, grounded realism, and exploration of medical science as a solution add a unique layer to the zombie genre. The film not only entertains with action and suspense but also provokes thought about how humanity responds to existential threats, making it a standout in apocalyptic storytelling. Let me know if you'd like this turned into a video script or review-style format next. World War Z, 2013. In-depth plot and narrative analysis. Large Orange Diamond directed by Marc Forster. Large Orange Diamond written by Matthew Michael Carnahan. Screenplay, based on the novel by Max Brooks. Large Orange Diamond genre, action horror thriller apocalypse. Small Blue Diamond narrative structure, a linear global odyssey. World War Z follows a conventional, linear narrative structure, with a single protagonist, Gerry Lane, as the audience's surrogate, guiding them through the film's apocalyptic landscape. Unlike the fragmented oral history style of the novel, the movie chooses a streamlined cinematic approach to create immediacy and urgency. Act 1. Introduction and immediate threat. White heavy checkmark setting the stage, the calm before the storm. The story opens in Philadelphia, with Gerry Lane, a former United Nations investigator, living a peaceful domestic life with his wife Karen and 2 young daughters. This idyllic setting sets up the emotional core of the film, family protection and survival. Narrative purpose. Introduce Gerry as a calm, composed family man with a mysterious, capable past, setting up a strong emotional investment from the audience. White heavy checkmark inciting incident. The outbreak begins. Without warning, a massive traffic jam and a loud explosion shatter normalcy. Chaos unfolds in the city streets as infected humans, transformed within 12 seconds of being bitten, begin attacking civilians. The infection spreads violently and rapidly. Turning point number 1. Gerry's quick thinking and observational skills emerge as he counts the infection's transformation time, 12 seconds. This moment reveals his analytical nature and sets up his importance in the survival narrative. Act 2. Rising action. The global hunt for answers. White heavy checkmark mission assigned, from survival to solution. After narrowly escaping with his family, Gerry is extracted by the U.S. military and brought to a naval fleet off the East Coast. There, the UN Deputy Secretary Thierry Umutoni informs him that the world is collapsing, and they need him to find the source of the virus. Stakes raised. Gerry must leave his family behind on the ship to join a global mission, or risk them being sent back into chaos. His reluctant agreement shifts him from passive survivor to active protagonist. Globe showing Europe-Africa first stop. South Korea, the first clue. Gerry travels to Camp Humphreys in South Korea, the first place where the word zombie was officially used. He learns that the infected are drawn to sound, and that the local CIA officer believes the Israeli government had prior knowledge of the outbreak. Narrative function. This segment introduces the concept that the virus has global implications, and subtle pieces of the solution, like sound sensitivity and early warnings, are scattered across continents. Globe showing Europe-Africa second stop. Jerusalem, the breach. Jerusalem is revealed to be the only city prepared, thanks to Israeli intelligence. A massive wall has been constructed around the city. However, refugees singing loudly attracts the infected, who create a zombie ladder and scale the wall, resulting in a brutal breach. Turning point number 2. Amid the chaos, Gerry notices that zombies ignore a young boy with a visible illness. This detail is crucial to his hypothesis. Globe showing Europe-Africa third stop. Mid-air horror and Wales. As Gerry escapes Jerusalem, his plane is overrun by a zombie passenger. He detonates a grenade to open a hole in the plane, causing it to crash in Wales. He barely survives and drags himself to a World Health Organization (WHO) facility. Act 3. Climax. The cure within. White heavy checkmark tense infiltration and breakthrough. At the WHO facility, Gerry hypothesizes that infecting a person with a terminal but curable disease will make them invisible to the zombies. The idea is to use disease as camouflage. However, the pathogen samples are in a wing of the lab infested with zombies. Suspense sequence. The infiltration into the infected lab is quiet, intense, and emotionally charged. With limited dialogue, the sequence builds psychological tension, in contrast to the action-heavy sequences earlier. White-heavy checkmark final test, the vaccine theory. Gerry injects himself with a deadly pathogen. When zombies ignore him, it proves the theory works. He walks out unharmed, and scientists develop this biological camouflage as a method to safely move through infected zones. Act 4, Resolution, a ray of hope. Gerry is reunited with his family. A voiceover from Gerry declares, "This isn't the end. Not even close," highlighting that while humanity is not saved, they have a fighting chance. Emotional closure. The story concludes with hope and determination, maintaining tension while providing some relief. It avoids a typical happy ending, preserving realism within its science fiction setting. Performing arts thematic analysis. Small Orange Diamond family and sacrifice. At its core, the film is about a father's willingness to face global terror for the sake of his family. This emotional foundation makes Gerry a grounded and relatable character amidst the chaos. Small Orange Diamond order versus chaos. The contrast between organized systems, the UN, military, WHO, and utter breakdown, cities, governments, society, is stark. The film suggests that while global structures can fail, individual action, intellect, and cooperation can make the difference. Small Orange Diamond survival through intelligence. Rather than brute strength or luck, it is Gerry's ability to observe, analyze, and hypothesize that leads to salvation. The solution, injecting a deadly pathogen, is unconventional and risky, highlighting scientific thinking as a heroic act. Narrative techniques and devices. Real-time urgency. Each new location feels like a ticking clock, with little time to rest or reflect. Expository minimalism. There are no lengthy scientific monologues. Information is revealed visually or through short, tense exchanges. Multiple geopolitical lenses. From North Korea's radical solution, removing teeth of all citizens, to Jerusalem's intelligence systems, the film showcases cultural responses to catastrophe. Medium white star conclusion. A refined, global zombie narrative. World War Z elevates the zombie genre by taking a globally scaled, emotionally grounded, and scientifically curious approach to the apocalypse. It avoids horror cliches and instead emphasizes intelligent survival, international stakes, and a clear, escalating narrative path. While it simplifies the source material's oral history format into a singular journey, it compensates with strong pacing, immersive world building, and an intense human connection. Would you like a summary version, a voiceover adaptation, or YouTube script based on this analysis next? World War Z, 2013. Character Development Analysis. Despite its large-scale global narrative and high-speed pacing, World War Z offers a subtle yet significant portrayal of character development, particularly in the case of its central figure, Gerry Lane, whose emotional growth and moral compass serve as the anchor for the entire film. Though most supporting characters are not given deep arcs due to limited screen time, they each represent important thematic and narrative functions. Small Blue Diamond Gerry Lane, played by Brad Pitt. Bullseye initial role and traits. Gerry Lane is introduced as a retired United Nations field investigator, now devoted full-time to his family. At the beginning of the film, he is portrayed as calm, composed, resourceful, and protective. He is not a typical action hero. He doesn't fight with brute strength or weapons, but rather with observation, logic, and empathy. Counterclockwise arrows growth and transformation. As the story progresses, Gerry undergoes a subtle but impactful transformation. Initially hesitant to rejoin the dangerous world of global politics and crisis intervention, he accepts the mission only because it's the only way to keep his family safe. However, his journey evolves from being a protective father to becoming a savior of humanity, not through force, but through critical thinking and courage under pressure. Character development highlights. In South Korea, he quickly pieces together how sound affects the infected. In Jerusalem, he observes the infected ignoring a sick boy, planting the seed of his hypothesis. At the WHO facility, he takes a massive personal risk by injecting himself with a pathogen, demonstrating self-sacrifice and conviction. By the end of the film, Gerry is no longer just a survivor or a father on a mission. He becomes a symbol of rational humanity in the face of global panic. Red Heart Hash emotional and relational core. Gerry's relationship with his wife and daughters remains the emotional backbone of the film. His separation from them, and fear of their vulnerability, motivates every decision he makes. Their emotional bond doesn't evolve dramatically, but its consistency and strength provide a human anchor in the story's chaos. Small Orange Diamond Karen Lane, Mireille Enos. Karen's role, though not deeply explored, serves as the emotional center and narrative catalyst. She's not a passive character. She's resourceful, brave, and emotionally resilient. Her panic during the helicopter evacuation and her calmness with her daughters show layers of her maternal strength. Her emotional connection to Gerry helps humanize him and gives the audience a reason to care about his mission. While she doesn't have a transformation arc, her character symbolizes what's at stake in the larger fight against the apocalypse: family, normalcy, and love. Small Orange Diamond Thierry Umutoni, Fana Mokina. Thierry is Gerry's former UN colleague and the one who calls him back into service. He's portrayed as efficient, compassionate, and loyal. Though his role is minor, Thierry represents global cooperation and trust, essential elements in a worldwide crisis. His character adds legitimacy to Gerry's mission and reinforces the idea that governments and institutions still have value in this world, despite the chaos. Small Orange Diamond Sijin, Daniela Cotes. A standout supporting character, Sijin, the Israeli soldier, undergoes a small but meaningful arc. Initially introduced as a loyal and silent bodyguard, she is unexpectedly bitten during the Jerusalem breach, and Gerry makes a split-second decision to amputate her arm, saving her from infection. This act builds trust and a bond between them, and she accompanies Gerry to Wales, becoming a reliable partner. Though not deeply verbal, her stoicism, bravery, and loyalty are emblematic of military discipline tempered by personal connection. Her transformation lies in her shift from a duty-bound soldier to a personal ally in Gerry's quest. Small Orange Diamond WHO scientists and miscellaneous characters. In the final act at the WHO facility, the scientists Gerry encounters, especially the mute doctor and the British lead, add tension and urgency, but they are more functional than character-driven. Still, their cooperation with Gerry and their silent panic add realism to the story. Other characters, like the CIA agent in Korea or the Mossad intelligence officer, play brief roles that deliver key information. These figures aren't fully fleshed out but serve as narrative messengers, expanding the film's geopolitical depth. Bullseye: how character development shapes the story. Gerry as a moral and intellectual compass. Gerry's character arc is the film's driving force. Unlike traditional zombie movie heroes who rely on combat, Gerry's growth is rooted in scientific reasoning, empathy, calm problem-solving under pressure, sacrifice for the greater good. His journey is one of transformation from reluctant observer to active agent of change, and this evolution reflects one of the film's core messages. The solution to global problems lies not in violence, but in intelligence, cooperation, and sacrifice. Globe showing Europe-Africa minimalist supporting arcs for global focus. Given the movie's sprawling, international scale, there is limited time to develop each secondary character. However, the film smartly uses short scenes and strong performances to make supporting characters feel authentic and emotionally grounded. They serve as snapshots of how different people respond to disaster, resistance, loyalty, fear, or hope. Conclusion: character over spectacle. While World War Z delivers large-scale zombie action and globe-trotting thrills, its emotional core is tightly focused on Gerry Lane's personal journey. His transformation from a family man to a reluctant hero of the human race adds gravitas and heart to what could have been a purely action-driven narrative. The characters may not all have complex arcs, but their motives, relationships, and moral choices reflect the film's deeper themes: survival, sacrifice, intellect over aggression, and the enduring power of human connection in the face of extinction. Would you like me to now prepare this as a YouTube voiceover script or make a character ranking with analysis for your channel content? World War Z, 2013. Performance analysis. Though World War Z is predominantly a large-scale action horror thriller, its emotional and thematic depth is strongly upheld by the convincing performances of its cast, led by Brad Pitt. The film's effectiveness lies not just in its visual spectacle, but in how its actors ground the chaos in real human emotion, elevating the story beyond a typical zombie apocalypse tale. Medium-white star Brad Pitt as Gerry Lane, a center of gravity. Brad Pitt's performance as Gerry Lane is undoubtedly the backbone of the film. As both the lead actor and a producer, Pitt had a creative influence on the film's direction, and it shows in his carefully measured performance. Bullseye: subtle, grounded heroism. Pitt portrays Gerry as a man of calm intelligence rather than bravado. He avoids the cliché of a muscle-bound, gun-wielding savior. Instead, Pitt brings a quiet authority and emotional restraint, making Gerry's intellect and moral integrity the character's greatest strengths. In moments of panic, like the Philadelphia outbreak, Pitt doesn't overact but maintains a steady presence, conveying both urgency and composure. His interactions with his family feel natural and heartfelt, giving weight to his motivations throughout the film. His silent determination during the WHO facility sequence, where he injects himself with a virus, is a masterclass in nonverbal tension. White have a checkmark impact on the film. Pitt's performance is anchoring and believable. He never turns Gerry into a caricature of a hero. Instead, he plays him as a relatable, emotionally complex man, forced into unimaginable situations but still choosing to act selflessly. Gold Military Medal Daniela Curtis as Sijan, a quiet standout. As Sijan, the young Israeli soldier who accompanies Gerry after the Jerusalem breach, Daniela Curtis delivers a subtle but striking performance. Small blue diamond stoicism and strength. Sijan doesn't speak much, but her body language, eye contact, and composure convey resilience. Her expressions during the post-amputation recovery and scenes at the WHO lab reflect trust, fear, and quiet strength without the need for heavy dialogue. Her chemistry with Pitt, especially after he saves her life by amputating her arm, creates an unspoken alliance that feels authentic. She represents the global human response to the outbreak, disciplined, committed, but not emotionless. Curtis' nuanced performance gives her character a memorable presence despite limited screen time, marking her as a standout in the supporting cast. Mireille Enos as Gerry Lane, emotional anchor. Playing Gerry's wife Karen, Mireille Enos brings tenderness, emotional range, and inner strength to a role that could have easily been underwritten. Broken heart naturalism in domestic scenes. Enos makes Karen's love and fear for her family palpable. Whether she's calming her children, panicking during an evacuation, or pleading with her husband over a satellite phone, she grounds the film's emotional stakes. Her breakdown after losing contact with Gerry isn't exaggerated. It's quiet and gut-wrenching, making her fear relatable. She represents the countless civilians caught in chaos, providing a counterbalance to Gerry's global journey. Although her role is mostly confined to the ship and flashbacks, Enos's commitment to authenticity gives her scenes a genuine emotional weight. Fana Mokina as Thierry Umutoni, a steady presence. As the UN official who recruits Gerry, Fana Mokina plays a crucial but understated role. His performance exudes professionalism and urgency. He conveys the immense pressure of managing global collapse, balancing bureaucratic coolness with moral concern. His loyalty to Gerry and his family adds a touch of personal warmth to a world filled with institutional coldness. Though not given many emotionally dramatic scenes, Mokina's performance adds credibility and authority to the narrative. Supporting cast and cameos, effective, purposeful. Several smaller roles and cameos contribute to the story's realism. WHO scientists. Actors like Peter Capaldi, Pierfrancesco Favino, and Ruth Negga play scientists at the World Health Organization. Their performances are low-key and efficient, reflecting the urgency and fear of professionals working under life-threatening conditions. Capaldi, in particular, communicates tension and dread with minimal dialogue, heightening the suspense of the third act. Israeli and Korean characters. Ludi Boken as the Mossad agent gives a credible and intense performance, helping the audience understand Israel's early response to the outbreak. The CIA agent in South Korea, David Morse, offers a haunting, memorable cameo, with a chilling tone and physical transformation, missing teeth, that embody paranoia and madness. Each of these performances, though brief, helps create a global mosaic of perspectives, making the world of the film feel expansive and authentic. Left-pointing magnifying glass performance summary, authenticity over theatrics. Actor-character performance style impact. Brad Pitt Gerry Lane controlled, thoughtful emotionally grounded, central focus. Daniela Curtis Sijan minimalist, strong scene stealer with silent presence. Mireille Enos Gerry Lane naturalistic, heartfelt emotional anchor and civilian lens. Fana Mokina Thierry Umutoni calm, composed diplomatic stability and realism. Peter Capaldi WHO scientist subdued, tense heightens third act suspense. David Morse ex-CIA operative eccentric, eerie memorable short performance. Clapperboard conclusion, a performance-driven thriller. While World War Z is built on the grand spectacle of a global zombie outbreak, the performances keep the film emotionally resonant and believable. Brad Pitt's layered portrayal of Gerry Lane is the film's heart and compass. He is ably supported by a cast that prioritizes realism, restraint, and authenticity over melodrama. The film's strongest asset is how its actors ground the unbelievable in human behavior, fear, love, duty, and sacrifice, making the story resonate with audiences far beyond the horror genre. World War Z, 2013. Direction analysis. Directed by Marc Forster, World War Z stands out among zombie apocalypse films for its global scale, intense realism, and suspense-driven storytelling. Forster, known for his work on Monsters Ball and Quantum of Solace, brings a mature and grounded directorial vision, elevating the film beyond action spectacle and into the realm of intelligent, politically aware thriller. Vision and tone, a global humanitarian thriller. Marc Forster approaches World War Z not just as a zombie movie, but as a global crisis narrative. His direction gives the film the tone of a pandemic disaster drama, more akin to Contagion or Children of Men than to The Walking Dead. Small Blue Diamond tone, urgent, grounded, realistic. Forster maintains a tone of urgency and dread throughout, with little reliance on gore or horror tropes. The film avoids traditional zombie movie excess in favor of logistical realism, crowd panic, military evacuations, disease control protocols, and global politics. There's an ever-present sense of ticking time, as each country Gerry visits teeters on the brink of collapse. Bullseye world-building through direction. Instead of focusing on one city or outbreak, Forster uses Gerry's journey to portray a global response to a shared catastrophe. The director ensures each location, from South Korea to Jerusalem to Wales, feels culturally distinct, adding authenticity and geopolitical texture to the narrative. Movie camera shot composition and cinematography, immersive and tense. With cinematography by Ben Serrazin, Forster uses a mix of wide-scale chaos and tight, claustrophobic frames to guide the viewer's emotional state. Camera with flash large-scale shots. In action-heavy scenes, like the Philadelphia outbreak or Jerusalem's wall breach, wide aerial shots are used to show massive human panic, giving viewers a godlike perspective of systemic failure. CGI is integrated with live action to depict overwhelming crowds of zombies like flooding water, enhancing the sense of helplessness. Movie camera close-quarter tension. In contrast, scenes inside the WHO lab or the airplane are shot in tight, narrow spaces, intensifying the fear and forcing the audience into the character's shoes. Handheld camera techniques are employed selectively to mimic news footage or documentary realism, grounding the fantastical threat in a familiar aesthetic. Pacing, fast, but focused. Marc Forster keeps the film fast-paced and suspenseful, but not without emotional beats. Police cars' revolving light balance of action and investigation. The story alternates between high adrenaline outbreaks and quiet, investigative scenes, allowing for tension to build before each explosive set piece. Forster's pacing reflects the film's structure as a race against time, with each international location acting like a narrative chapter. Red-hot emotional breath amid chaos. Despite the global scale, Forster ensures personal, emotional moments are preserved, especially between Gerry and his family. These moments offer brief but impactful pauses, humanizing the crisis and allowing the audience to catch their breath. Narrative focus, intellect over brutality. Forster consciously subverts the expected zombie film structure. The climax isn't a huge action battle, but a quiet, high-stakes gamble of intellect. The WHO facility sequence. This third-act setting is almost entirely devoid of action but loaded with psychological suspense. Forster uses sound design, silence, and character expressions rather than combat to build tension. The scene where Gerry injects himself and walks through the hallway of infected zombies is a masterclass in minimalism and risk-driven suspense. This creative choice underlines the director's commitment to character-driven storytelling rather than spectacle for its own sake. Artist palette stylistic choices, subtle but purposeful. Color palette and mood. The film employs a cold, muted color palette, blues, grays, and washed-out yellows, which contributes to a sense of realism and despair. There is no stylized violence, no glamorization of gore. Everything is seen through a lens of clinical detachment, emphasizing the biological threat over monstrous horror. Musical score, music and atmosphere. With a haunting score by Marco Beltrami, Forster uses music sparingly and strategically, often letting the natural sounds of chaos, screams, sirens, silence, do the heavy lifting. The music swells primarily during moments of discovery or emotional decision, rather than during action, which helps emphasize the intellectual arc of Gerry's journey. Left-pointing magnifying glass, unique directorial achievements. Directorial element impact on film. Global scope enhances realism and raises narrative stakes. Minimal gore, maximum suspense makes the film more accessible and grounded. Quiet climax subverts genre expectations, highlights human intelligence. Location-based storytelling gives each chapter cultural and emotional distinction. Focus on Humanity prioritizes survival, love, and cooperation over violence. Challenges and behind-the-scenes triumphs. Marc Forster faced numerous production difficulties, including reshoots and script rewrites, especially regarding the original third act, which was more action-heavy and set in Russia. Yet, the final vision that emerged is tighter, more character-focused, and thematically stronger. Despite these hurdles, Forster steered the film toward a more intimate and hopeful resolution, shifting from chaos to cure, from combat to compassion. Bullseye conclusion: direction that defies genre limits. Marc Forster's direction in World War Z is controlled, mature, and unusually intellectual for a zombie film. He strips away gore and bravado to focus on fear, survival, and the strength of human intellect and empathy. His stylistic restraint, narrative clarity, and global scope turn the film into more than just a disaster thriller. It becomes a portrait of humanity under threat, not from the undead, but from its own fragility and ingenuity. In an age crowded with formulaic zombie content, World War Z stands out due to Marc Forster's commitment to realism, character, and cinematic discipline. World War Z, 2013. Cinematography analysis. Cinematographer Ben Serazin crafts a visual experience in World War Z that complements director Marc Forster's grounded, global vision. Rather than adopting a purely stylistic or horror-based approach, the film's cinematography aims for a blend of documentary realism and cinematic spectacle. The camera choices, angles, movement, lighting, and color palette all serve to enhance the story's scale, urgency, and human core. Through strategic visual language, Serazin turns a global catastrophe into a visceral, immersive experience. Visual tone and global realism. One of the most distinct accomplishments of the cinematography is its commitment to authenticity and realism. The film avoids overly stylized filters or color grading. Instead, it uses naturalistic lighting and handheld camera work to simulate a ground-level view of the crisis. This documentary-like approach makes the film's unbelievable elements, like mass zombie outbreaks, feel plausible and immediate. Artist palette color palette, muted and bleak. The dominant hues are desaturated blues, grays, and sandy tones, reflecting a world that's literally and figuratively drained of life. In locations like Jerusalem and the WHO lab in Wales, this palette shifts subtly but remains consistent in its bleakness, reinforcing the global scale of decay. Camera movement and angles, controlled chaos. Ben Serazin's camera work is a balancing act between chaotic immersion and narrative clarity. Police cars' revolving light outbreak sequences, immersive and disorienting. In the early outbreak scene in Philadelphia, the cinematography uses shaky cam and fast whip pans to simulate the confusion and panic of the civilians. Low, ground-level angles and sweeping tracking shots place viewers right in the middle of the fleeing crowds, invoking a sense of helplessness and immediacy. Aerial perspective, strategic use of wide shots. The massive swarm of zombies scaling the wall in Jerusalem is shown using wide aerial shots, allowing audiences to grasp the full scale of the event. The camera mimics a drone-like omniscience, offering a horrifying view of humanity's fragility in the face of such overwhelming force. Left-pointing magnifying glass framing and composition. Isolation versus overwhelm. Throughout World War Z, framing is used not just for aesthetics but to subtly reinforce narrative themes, especially the tension between the individual and the masses. Bust in silhouette isolating the protagonist. In scenes where Gerry Lane is alone or making decisions, the framing often centers him tightly in the frame with shallow depth of field, blurring out the chaotic background. This not only emphasizes his isolation and pressure, but also reinforces his centrality to the audience's emotional experience. Busts in silhouette crowd chaos. In contrast, outbreak scenes often use deep focus and wide frames, showing dense crowds of both people and zombies in stark contrast to the protagonist's smallness. This creates a visual metaphor for humanity being dwarfed by its own crisis. Gerry is just one man, yet the eye is constantly drawn to him. Milky Way lighting, realism, contrast, and psychological effect. Sun with rays natural light for daytime sequences. Daytime scenes, like in Jerusalem and South Korea, use high-key, naturalistic lighting. This adds realism and also subverts the usual horror trope of nightbound terror. By bringing the fear into broad daylight, the cinematography destabilizes audience expectations, making it clear that safety is an illusion. New moon symbol low light for suspense. The WHO facility sequence relies on low-key lighting, heavy shadows, and minimal ambient light. Flashlights, flickering bulbs, and monitor screens become key light sources. This deliberate darkness amplifies suspense, especially in scenes where zombies might lurk just outside the light's edge. Electric light bulb backlighting and silhouettes. Strategic backlighting is used in emotional moments, such as when Gerry says goodbye to his family or when the helicopter lifts off, framing the characters in silhouettes that evoke both separation and sacrifice. Glowing star visually striking moments. Several scenes stand out not only narratively but also visually, thanks to Straczynski's dynamic cinematography. 1. The Jerusalem Swarm. A signature sequence where zombies scale a towering wall like insects. The cinematography uses a long, fluid crane shot to follow the chaos as it spreads from the outer streets to the inner city. The sense of scale and momentum is breathtaking, with excellent depth of field work. Airplane #2. Plane crash sequence. Begins with tight interior framing and shaking camera work to simulate turbulence. Quickly switches to external tracking shots and POV angles during the crash, immersing the viewer in every terrifying detail. 3. The WHO corridor scene. Perhaps the most suspenseful scene in the film. The cinematography relies on stillness, silence, and symmetrical framing as Gerry walks past the infected. The tension is visualized through slow zooms and close-ups, with dim lighting enhancing every breath and footstep. How cinematography serves the story. Cinematographic element narrative function. Shaky handheld shots creates panic and realism during outbreaks. Wide aerial perspectives emphasizes global scale and helplessness. Tight close-ups humanizes characters and highlights emotional tension. Dim lighting in interiors builds psychological horror and claustrophobia. Realistic color palette reinforces grounded, pandemic-like tone. Bullseye conclusion. Cinematography that blends scope with intimacy. The cinematography in World War Z masterfully balances blockbuster-scale storytelling with intimate, emotionally driven framing. Ben Straczynski's camera doesn't just show the apocalypse, it places the viewer inside it, capturing the tension of every breath, the horror of every collapse, and the humanity at the center of it all. By shifting between panoramic destruction and close, claustrophobic tension, the cinematography ensures that World War Z remains not just visually stunning, but also viscerally immersive, a cinematic survival experience that's as psychologically intense as it is physically large-scale. World War Z, 2013. Editing and pacing analysis. World War Z is a film that moves with urgency and precision, and much of that credit belongs to its editing team, led by Roger Barton and Matt Chess. With a storyline that jumps across continents and timelines, the editing is central to maintaining the narrative's clarity, tension, and emotional resonance. From high-octane action to somber human moments, the film's pace is a deliberate dance between chaos and control. Film # overall flow and narrative cohesion. Despite undergoing significant production challenges, including reshoots, a rewritten third act, and restructured plot threads, the final version of World War Z displays a remarkably fluid narrative structure. The editing stitches together scenes from drastically different global settings, Philadelphia, South Korea, Israel, Wales, without feeling disjointed. Transitions are often smooth, aided by sound bridges, location-establishing shots, and musical continuity from scene to scene. Even with the episodic mission-based progression, the film retains cohesion by anchoring everything to the protagonist, Gerry Lane, ensuring a continuous emotional through line. Pacing strategy, high stakes, varied rhythm. One of the film's strongest points is its rhythm, a deliberate ebb and flow that mimics real-world crisis escalation while giving the audience time to process both emotion and exposition. Police cars revolving light, fast-paced action sequences. Outbreak scenes, Philadelphia, Jerusalem, the airplane attack, are cut with rapid, kinetic editing, reflecting the chaos of the moment. Shots are often short in duration, average 2 to 3 seconds, increasing narrative urgency and keeping the viewer on edge. Strategic use of cross-cutting during chaos allows the editor to highlight multiple characters' reactions and dangers simultaneously. Slower, suspense-driven sections. The WHO facility scene is the polar opposite. Long takes, minimal cuts, and heavy reliance on silence heighten psychological tension. The slowed pace here is intentional, forcing the viewer into a state of dread, anticipation, and intimacy with Gerry's experience. This alternation between explosive bursts and introspective pauses gives the film a rhythm that mimics a heartbeat, accelerating in danger, slowing in reflection, keeping viewers consistently engaged without fatigue. Chains # editing techniques that strengthen storytelling. Counterclockwise arrows, montage, and cross-cutting. The film uses montage effectively, especially in the early moments, to establish global panic through news footage-style cuts, aerial views, and surveillance imagery. Cross-cutting between Gerry's mission and his family on the military ship adds emotional stakes and serves as a tether between action and sentiment. Parallel editing for tension. During the airplane attack, editing jumps between Gerry noticing a zombie bite, the zombie transformation, the chain reaction of panic, and pilots reacting in the cockpit. This layered structure builds multidirectional suspense, showing the spread of infection in real time across multiple narrative planes. Musical score sound bridge transitions. Editors use audio, such as helicopters, screams, or TV news chatter, to link scenes across geography. These transitions maintain the illusion of continuity even as the setting abruptly shifts, such as from Jerusalem to the aircraft carrier. Emotional impact through editing choices. Family man-woman girl cutting for intimacy. Scenes with Gerry's family are edited with longer, more stable shots, underscoring emotional connection. The editing rhythm here is slower, more thoughtful, reinforcing the idea that Gerry is anchored by love and duty, even amid the chaos. Explosion symbol cutting for shock. When chaos erupts, e.g., the first outbreak in Philadelphia, editors use jump cuts and visual jolts to simulate shock and confusion, mirroring how the average citizen would experience an unknown pandemic. Speak off silence and stillness. In the third act, silence becomes a tool. Minimal editing and long, static takes heighten vulnerability, especially when Gerry walks past the infected in the WHO lab. The lack of visual noise in these moments enhances viewer anxiety, making every small motion, like turning a doorknob, feel monumental. Heavy exclamation mark symbol challenges in pacing and narrative structure. Although the final edit is cohesive, the film's behind-the-scenes production troubles are evident in some minor pacing imbalances. Warning sign second act slightly compressed. The transitions between South Korea and Jerusalem feel a bit rushed, and character interactions in these regions don't always have time to breathe. Secondary characters introduced in these locations often vanish quickly, leaving little room for deeper development. This is a side effect of the film's tight edit and globe-trotting format. Counterclockwise Arrow's third act rebuild. The original climax was heavily reshot and re-edited to become more intimate and cerebral. While the new ending is critically praised for its restraint, some viewers may notice a tonal and pacing shift, from epic global adventure to slow-burn containment horror. Still, these issues are well managed through clever editing, and the final product flows far more seamlessly than its production history would suggest. Bar chart editing and pacing summary table. Editing element narrative effect. Rapid cuts in action scenes amplify tension, simulate chaos. Long takes in suspense sequences build dread, focus viewer attention. Cross-cutting between locations heightens suspense, connects global threads. Emotional pacing in family scenes grounds the narrative in human connection. Sound bridge transitions maintains flow between diverse settings. Re-edited third act prioritizes emotional resolution over spectacle. Bullseye conclusion, a pulse-pounding, intelligently paced edit. The editing of World War Z is a critical factor in the film's success. It not only sustains a high-stakes, globe-trotting adventure, but also balances this with moments of quiet fear and emotional intimacy. Editors Roger Barton and Matt Chess employ a versatile toolkit, fast cuts, long takes, sound bridges, and parallel editing, to shape a story that feels both epic and personal. Despite production hurdles, the film's editing maintains an effective narrative tempo and emotional rhythm, ensuring that World War Z never loses its grip on the audience, whether it's showing thousands of zombies overtaking a city or a single man holding his breath in silence. World War Z, 2013. Soundtrack and score analysis. The score for World War Z is composed by Marco Beltrami, a veteran of horror, thriller, and action genres. Beltrami's work on the film is not just background music. It is a critical emotional and atmospheric engine that drives the intensity of the film's scenes, heightens dread, and even provides subtle moments of hope and humanity. Rather than overpowering the film with a grand orchestral theme, the score carefully blends into the fabric of the narrative, providing a sonic pulse that mirrors the film's shifting pace and emotional undercurrents. Musical score tone and musical direction, tension over melody. Unlike traditional blockbuster scores that rely heavily on sweeping melodic themes, World War Z opts for a more textural and rhythmic soundscape. The music leans into minimalism, dissonance, and percussive repetition, creating a relentless undercurrent of tension. This decision reflects the tone of the film itself, a world in chaos where the threat is constant and invisible, and peace is fleeting. Marco Beltrami uses unusual instrumentation and sonic manipulation to keep the viewer constantly on edge, with pulses, low drones, sudden string stabs, and industrial sounds filling the score. Speaker with 3 sound waves, notable techniques and sound elements. Pulsing rhythms and heartbeat motifs. One of Beltrami's most effective tools is the use of rhythmic pulses, beats that mimic a racing heartbeat or a countdown clock. These motifs appear during action scenes and rising tension, creating an almost subconscious anxiety in the audience. For example, during the Jerusalem Wall breach and airplane zombie attack, these rhythmic patterns accelerate and intensify, syncing with the pace of the action. Explosion symbol electronic and orchestral fusion. The score incorporates a blend of electronic sound design and traditional orchestration. Deep bass tones and synthetic textures are layered beneath strings and brass, giving the music a modern, post-apocalyptic vibe. This hybrid sound helps differentiate World War Z from standard action scores, reinforcing its global, contemporary crisis theme. Musical notes stand out musical cues and scenes. The Jerusalem invasion. One of the most memorable pieces in the film, this sequence features the full force of Beltrami's percussive style. As the zombies swarm over the wall, the music begins with building, syncopated percussion and sharp staccato strings. The tension is layered and unrelenting, matching the rising dread of the scene. The rhythmic crescendo mirrors the increasing swarm behavior, and the music becomes a literal part of the panic. Airplane sequence. During the plane outbreak, the score again relies on tight rhythms and high-pitched string tremolos. As the infection spreads rapidly through the cabin, the music feels claustrophobic, with rising dissonance emphasizing the character's limited space and options. WHO lab sequence, use of silence. One of the most effective sound design decisions in the film is the use of silence during the WHO laboratory infiltration. Rather than flooding the scene with tension music, Beltrami and the sound team often pull back, allowing ambient noises, breathing, shuffling, doors creaking, to carry the suspense. When music is used, it's subtle and atmospheric, heightening dread without distracting the viewer. Headphone emotional undercurrents. While much of the score focuses on suspense, there are brief but crucial emotional cues that underscore Gerry Lane's motivations and inner life. In scenes with his wife and daughters, the music softens, often introducing slow, melancholic strings or ambient pads. These moments ground the protagonist in humanity and vulnerability, providing contrast to the relentless horror outside. This emotional balance ensures the film doesn't become purely mechanical in its tension. There's always a heart beating beneath the chaos. Soundtrack integration, complement, not competition. One of the strengths of Beltrami's approach is that the score never overwhelms the storytelling. It is supportive, immersive, and atmospheric, working with the visuals and pacing rather than competing with them. Dialogue remains clear and undistracted, even in scenes with heavy music. The mix balances sound effects, score, and silence in a way that enhances immersion rather than bombarding the viewer. Unlike many modern action films, World War Z uses restraint, an often underappreciated skill in film scoring. Bar chart soundtrack and score summary table. Musical element narrative emotional effect. Rhythmic pulses and heartbeats build suspense, mimics human tension. Hybrid electronic orchestral mix modernizes the tone, fits the global disaster setting. Silence in key scenes amplifies fear, sharpens audience focus. Emotional string passages humanizes Gerry's journey, adds depth to family connections. Percussive crescendos drives action scenes, mirrors chaos and urgency. Bullseye conclusion, a score that breathes with the film. Marco Beltrami's score for World War Z is a masterclass in tension-driven minimalism and textural storytelling. By resisting the urge to create grand themes or dominating melodies, Beltrami delivers a score that enhances the film's atmosphere without distracting from its content. Through a careful mix of percussion, dissonance, and emotionally strategic silence, the music echoes the pulse of a world in collapse, while still finding moments of fragile humanity. Whether it's guiding the viewer through scenes of mass chaos or whispered dread, the soundtrack is an unseen character, one that makes World War Z not just thrilling to watch, but deeply felt on a sensory level. World War Z, 2013. Soundtrack and score, ultra-detailed analysis. Composer, Marco Beltrami. Music type, suspense-driven, minimalistic, percussive hybrid score. Genre fit, zombie action thriller, a global pandemic film. Clapperboard eye. The role of music in the film's structure. From the film's opening scene to its final moments, Marco Beltrami's score is not just an accompaniment, it's an invisible character. The music adapts dynamically to the movie's three-act structure, shifting from eerie stillness to chaotic bursts, enhancing not only the emotion but the global sense of unease. Act 1. The calm before the collapse. The film opens with seemingly normal domestic life. Beltrami uses low drones and barely audible motifs, setting an undercurrent of dread. As the zombie outbreak begins in Philadelphia, the tempo quickens. The score moves into ticking rhythms, like a time bomb, mirroring Gerry Lane's growing awareness of the disaster. Here, Beltrami's music evokes urgency and confusion, but not yet full panic, allowing the visuals to breathe while preparing the audience for chaos. Act 2. Global desperation. As Gerry travels across South Korea, Israel, and eventually into the skies, Beltrami introduces industrial percussions, sharp stabs of violins, and mechanical groans in the score. The Jerusalem sequence features one of the most intense pieces, tribal drums mixed with digital manipulation, evoking the swarm-like momentum of the undead. Here, the music becomes environmental, a swirling layer of the landscape. It doesn't just support action, it intensifies the scale of collapse. Act 3. The personal confrontation. In contrast, the final act in the WHO facility is nearly silent. Minimal piano motifs and sustained high-frequency tones play during Gerry's infiltration. This minimalist approach places the audience in his shoes, isolated, breathing heavily, waiting to be heard. When he tests the pathogen on himself, Beltrami introduces a single melodic phrase, a small spark of hope in a film otherwise devoid of comfort. Violin 2. Musical techniques and instruments used. Marco Beltrami is known for experimenting with non-traditional elements, and World War Z is no exception. The score is a hybrid of organic and digital, utilizing strange instruments and manipulated sounds. Drum with drumsticks percussive elements. One of the score's backbones is found sound percussion, including processed metallic hits, slamming doors, and industrial clatter. In zombie attack scenes, rhythms are irregular and syncopated, creating unease. The lack of predictable beat patterns mirrors the unpredictable virus spread. Violin strings and dissonance. Violins and cellos are used not for melody, but for texture, often sliding between notes, glissando, or playing high-pitched tremolos. In tense scenes, strings are layered in clusters of dissonant chords to mimic the screech of fear and the chaos of undead swarms. Speaker with 3 sound waves, electronic and ambient layers. Beltrami uses synth pads and sub-bass waves to create an oppressive sonic atmosphere in large open spaces, like the UN cargo ship or the WHO lab. Drones in these scenes sustain unease without calling attention to themselves, creating a sonic fog that keeps tension ever present. Speak-off 3. The power of silence and subtlety. Beltrami understands the value of absence. One of the most innovative aspects of World War Z's soundscape is how often silence is used as a scoring technique. Headphone key examples. WHO lab infiltration. There's a sequence where Gerry slowly moves through a hallway surrounded by infected. The soundtrack disappears, and the only noise is his breath and the ambient hum of electricity. Effect. This absence of score forces the viewer into a hyper-alert state, amplifying every creak, rustle, or motion. Cinematic intent. It's a reminder that true horror often thrives not in sound, but in waiting. Multiple musical notes. 4. Emotional and thematic undercurrents. Though much of the film is focused on terror and survival, the score does leave small emotional breadcrumbs, especially around Gerry's connection to his family. Emotional leitmotifs. When Gerry says goodbye to his daughters, a soft, repeating piano motif plays. It's not melodramatic, but fragile, underscoring his vulnerability and love. This motif briefly returns in the final scenes, creating a musical closure that parallels the narrative's resolution. Hope, but not safety. Musical score v. Notable score tracks, official soundtrack. Here are some standout tracks from the World War Z official score album. Track title, scene description, musical style. Philadelphia, opening outbreak scene in traffic, sharp percussive cuts, urgent pacing. The Lane family, early domestic scenes with family, soft, ambient textures, delicate piano. Jerusalem is lost, zombies climb the wall. City falls, epic tribal drums, rising dissonance. Wales, WHO lab infiltration, bare ambience, silence, rising tension. Like a river around a rock, Gerry figures out the solution, injects himself, slow-build orchestration, emotional climax. The end draws near, closing moments and hopeful montage, subtle strings, low chords of resolve. Headphone 6. Soundtrack's cinematic legacy. Though not a score filled with hummable melodies, Beltrami's music for World War Z is widely praised for redefining the zombie genre's musical palette. It avoids horror cliches like shrieking violins and loud stinger effects, creating global musical cohesion. The score adapts to each location but keeps a consistent emotional tone. Supporting realism. The music works in tandem with documentary-like cinematography to make the zombie outbreak feel terrifyingly plausible. Bullseye conclusion. A subversive, intelligent, and tension-driven score. Marco Beltrami's soundtrack for World War Z is a masterclass in restraint, atmosphere, and modern cinematic scoring. He resists traditional blockbuster tropes and instead delivers a soundtrack that is layered, unsettling, and deeply immersive. Rather than overshadow the narrative, the score serves it, breathing with the characters, trembling during fear, pulsing in panic, and withdrawing in grief. It's a soundscape tailored to a world unraveling, and one that continues to stand out as one of the most inventive scores in zombie cinema. World War Z, 2013. Themes and messages, in-depth analysis. Genre, action thriller pandemic horror. Director, Marc Forster. Based on the novel by Max Brooks, adapted loosely. Skull 1. Global interconnectedness and fragility of civilization. At its core, World War Z is a film about how interconnected and fragile modern civilization truly is. Within minutes of the zombie outbreak in Philadelphia, the entire infrastructure collapses. Traffic, law enforcement, communication. This represents the butterfly effect of global crises. One spark of chaos in a dense urban center can ignite worldwide instability. Message. Despite technological advancement and modern comfort, humanity lives on a thin line between order and anarchy. In the global age, no country, no matter how powerful, is immune to viral threats or the spread of panic. 2. The metaphor of the zombie as a global pandemic. Although the film is about zombies, it intentionally avoids traditional supernatural lore. Instead, it treats the infection as a global health crisis, which can be read as a metaphor for real-world pandemics like SARS, H1N1, Ebola, or COVID-19 years later. The rapid spread, confusion, misinformation, and overwhelmed governments mirror real-world public health breakdowns. Scientists struggle to understand it, and nations adopt desperate or unethical methods of control. Message. The undead are not just horror creatures. They symbolize how unprepared the world is for sudden, systemic threats, and how fragile human systems become under biological pressure. 3. Individual responsibility versus institutional collapse. Gerry Lane, the protagonist, is a former UN investigator, not a superhero, soldier, or chosen one. His arc reflects the theme of personal responsibility amidst collective failure. While governments panic and collapse, one man's moral compass and investigative thinking become humanity's best chance at survival. He doesn't fight with guns, but with observation, logic, and compassion. Message. When institutions crumble, humanity's survival may depend on the conscience, courage, and intelligence of individuals. This speaks to the importance of leadership grounded in empathy and critical thinking. Left-pointing magnifying glass 4. Survival through intelligence, not violence. Unlike most zombie films that glorify combat and gore, World War Z emphasizes intellect, strategy, and adaptability. Gerry survives multiple global hotspots not by brute force, but by noticing patterns, how zombies avoid the terminally ill, how infection spreads, etc. The solution to the pandemic is not a vaccine or cure, but a form of camouflage, a scientific workaround rather than total eradication. Message. Victory over chaos doesn't always come through war. Sometimes, observation, humility, and cleverness are greater weapons than bullets. Family Man Woman Girl Boy 5. Family as motivation and moral anchor. Gerry's decisions are consistently driven by his need to protect his wife and daughters. Their survival is not just his goal, but his emotional compass. His refusal to initially abandon his family or misuse others for survival illustrates the theme of love over self-preservation. Even as he navigates high-stakes global missions, his family remains his moral clarity. Message. In a collapsing world, love, loyalty, and personal relationships provide meaning and direction. Humanity survives not just through biology, but through emotional bonds. Synagogue 6. Faith, culture, and global response diversity. The film showcases how different nations respond to crisis, subtly critiquing or exploring cultural and political dynamics. Israel builds a massive wall to keep the infected out, a literal and symbolic act of defensive isolationism, though it ultimately fails. North Korea's response is extreme, removing all citizens' teeth to prevent biting. This points to totalitarian overreach. South Korea is where the conspiracy of the outbreak begins to unravel, highlighting the role of information suppression. Message: in global crises, no response is perfect, but openness, adaptability, and cooperation matter more than fear-based isolation or authoritarian extremes. The film critiques how fear can lead to dehumanizing or irrational actions. 7. The psychology of panic and herd behavior. Zombies in World War Z act with terrifying swarm logic, moving as fast, mindless collectives. The film visualizes panic contagion, not just viral, but behavioral. In one moment, humans panic and block exits, mirroring the zombies' swarm-like obstruction. Message: the real horror may not be the undead, but how quickly fear reduces humanity to chaos. Panic spreads faster than viruses, and in many cases, humans become their own worst enemy. Seedling 8. Hope in the face of hopelessness. Despite its bleak visuals and non-stop tension, World War Z ends with a surprisingly hopeful tone. Gerry discovers a temporary solution, not a cure, but a way to give humanity time to rebuild. A message is spoken. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. Message: even in the darkest hour, humans are capable of survival, adaptation, and resilience. The film suggests that hope is not naive, it is essential for progress. Summary table of themes. Theme explored through: fragility of civilization, infrastructure collapse, government breakdown. Globalization and interconnectedness, fast virus spread, international locations. Individual responsibility, Gerry's choices, observation-based problem solving. Science over violence, viral camouflage strategy. Power of family and emotional bonds, Gerry's motivation, family reunification. Cultural and political crisis response, Israel's war, North Korea's drastic measures, South Korea's silence. Herd behavior and fear psychology, zombie swarms, human panic, social breakdown. Resilience and hope, final scenes of global adaptation and survival message. Bullseye, final thoughts, an intelligent disaster allegory. From a thematic standpoint, World War Z transcends its zombie genre roots. Rather than focusing on gore or jump scares, the film uses the undead as a mirror for humanity, our fears, systems, failures, and resilience. The movie's ultimate strength lies in its intellectual and emotional maturity. It's not about fighting monsters, it's about understanding them, learning from chaos, and preserving what makes us human. In the end, it's not the strongest or the most brutal who survive, but those who adapt, love, and lead with empathy. World War Z, 2013. Expanded themes and hidden messages. 1. The collapse of human systems, a warning against overconfidence. The film begins in a world that seems safe, structured, and efficient. But within minutes of the outbreak, that facade vanishes. Hospitals overflow, governments panic, militaries are wiped out, and public trust erodes instantly. Deeper meaning. The story illustrates how modern society is a thin crust of order over deep chaos. All our institutions, military, science, politics, are designed for yesterday's problems, not tomorrow's unknowns. Pushpin, this theme invites reflection on how dependent we are on systems that we assume will always function. Globe, showing Europe, Africa too. Globalization as both strength and vulnerability. The infection spreads faster than any in cinematic history, thanks to global air travel, interconnected economies, and urbanization. Countries fall not in weeks, but in days or hours. No region is safe. Disease doesn't respect borders. Philosophical insight. While globalization unites us economically and socially, it also means our risks are now shared globally. An outbreak in one place is a threat to all. Pushpin, it's a metaphor for how modern progress carries unintended dangers. 3. The unpredictability of evolution and nature. The zombies in World War Z are not magical or cursed. They are biologically infected. But their speed, aggression, and hive-like coordination suggest something beyond natural evolution. Symbolism. The virus is a stand-in for nature's revenge, a reminder that human dominance over the natural world is fragile. It also reflects fears about genetic mutations, lab accidents, or biological warfare, which feel terrifyingly plausible. Pushpin, nature adapts. Do we? 4. Ethical dilemmas in times of crisis. Gerry Lane is repeatedly faced with decisions that pit morality against survival. Should he leave his family to try saving the world? Should he trust new allies in dangerous zones? Should the world risk experimenting with pathogens to fight the virus? These choices show how in global disasters, there are no perfect solutions, only compromises. Moral question raised. Can we preserve humanity's soul when forced into survival mode? Pushpin the film asks viewers, in crisis, what would you sacrifice? Ethics, family, innocence, European Castle 5. Illusion of security, walls will fall. The Israel sequence is perhaps the most symbolic scene in the film. The country, aware of the incoming threat, builds a massive wall around its cities. For a moment, it works, until the sheer weight of the infected horde causes the wall to collapse. Thematic interpretation. Walls, literal or political, give a false sense of security in a hyperconnected world. No matter how high, they cannot keep out fear, ideology, disease, or desperation forever. Pushpin it's a metaphor for flawed isolationist thinking in global crises. Microscope 6. Science as the last line of defense. Unlike many action films, World War Z does not end with a final battle. It ends in a lab, with a scientific workaround. Gerry deduces that zombies avoid the terminally ill, and engineers a way to camouflage the living. Subtextual message. Warfare and weapons are no match for reason, curiosity, and scientific method. Humanity's greatest survival trait is not strength, but intellect. Pushpin in the age of misinformation and anti-science movements, this theme feels especially urgent. Performing Arts 7. Emotional detachment versus human connection. Throughout the film, we see the infected completely lose individuality. They act as a hive, a mob, a wave. In contrast, Gerry remains calm, emotionally aware, and focused on preserving humanity. Contrast drawn. The infected symbolize the loss of empathy and identity. Gerry and his allies represent the preservation of compassion and rationality. Pushpin are we closer to the swarm than we think, especially under pressure. 8. Refugee experience and global displacement. In multiple scenes, the surviving humans are shown fleeing on ships, living in crowded camps, or being denied entry to safe zones. This reflects real-world refugee crises. Symbolic insight. War, disease, and political collapse have displaced millions in real life. The film subtly critiques how quickly society others the desperate and turns them away. It's a call for empathy toward the displaced, because anyone can become a refugee overnight. Shield #9. Hope through sacrifice. Gerry's journey is about sacrifice. He doesn't fight for personal glory. He fights for a future, a cure, a chance. He leaves his family in danger. He risks himself by injecting unknown pathogens. He walks into a zombie-infested corridor alone, with only hope as his weapon. Emotional message. True heroism is not about killing monsters. It's about enduring fear, choosing hope, and making the hard choices for the greater good. Pushpin this is the soul of the story, a reminder that salvation often requires personal loss. 10. Ambiguity of victory. The ending of World War Z is intentionally uncertain. There is no vaccine. The world is still burning. Gerry survives, but not with triumph, only with resilience. Philosophical message. Not all victories are clean. Sometimes, survival is the only win. The film rejects Hollywood finality in favor of a realistic resolution. The fight continues, but now humanity has a chance. World War Z, 2013. Visual effects and CGI analysis. In World War Z, visual effects are not merely spectacle. They are integral to the film's tone, tension, and storytelling. The film, directed by Marc Forster, leans heavily on CGI to depict its large-scale apocalypse, but its effectiveness lies in how seamlessly the digital work supports the narrative without overpowering the human drama. Personal Computer 1. Massive zombie swarms, digital chaos with purpose. One of the most striking uses of CGI in the film is the depiction of zombie hordes, not as shambling individuals, but as a ravenous, fast-moving wave. These scenes required extensive digital modeling and simulation, executed primarily by MPC, Moving Picture Company, and Cinesite, who led the VFX production. The Israel wall climb sequence stands out. Zombies are shown forming a living ladder, cascading over each other like ants, to scale a massive protective wall. The CGI motion dynamics are deliberately unnatural, creating a visceral unease. They move in twitchy, unpredictable bursts that feel animalistic rather than human, which enhances the horror. Pushpin the VFX create a sense of scale and unstoppable momentum, crucial to conveying how quickly humanity is losing control. 2. Realism versus stylization, a fine balance. Unlike many zombie films that rely on grotesque, exaggerated gore, World War Z uses restrained digital gore. Blood and mutilation are not the focus. Instead, the tension comes from scale, speed, and unpredictability. The infection is shown spreading rapidly through transformation, with twitching, convulsing movements amplified digitally. Sound design is merged with digital animation, particularly in transformation sequences, to heighten realism. By avoiding hyper-stylized visuals, the film keeps its tone grounded and immediate, almost documentary-like in feel. Pushpin, this strategic restraint makes the CGI feel more like a tool for immersion rather than distraction. Cityscape #3. Environmental destruction, large-scale digital landscapes. The film's global narrative required creating multiple cityscapes digitally, including Philadelphia, Jerusalem, Seoul, and Cardiff. Many of the aerial and wide-scale city shots were either digitally created or enhanced using compositing techniques. Destruction sequences, like exploding cars, helicopter crashes, and bridge collapses, were a mix of practical effects layered with CGI. Digital set extensions helped simulate global scope without physical travel to all locations, especially for the UN fleet scenes at sea. The key success here is that the environments don't feel fake. CGI is used subtly to expand the scale, not to dazzle unnecessarily. Pushpin, the digital world building, supports the illusion of a global catastrophe, without pulling the viewer out of the moment. #4. Character-level effects, digital enhancements of performance. While the swarm was created digitally, many of the close-up infected characters were practical performances, enhanced with CGI overlays to tweak facial contortions or eye movement. Digital effects were used to enhance rather than replace practical makeup, keeping the character's physical presence intact. The most unnerving moments, such as a zombie clicking its teeth near the WHO facility, combine actor physicality with subtle digital augmentation, rather than full CGI rendering. Pushpin, this hybrid technique makes the infected feel tangible and more terrifying. Video Game 5. Practical effects integration, seamless transitions. Practical effects weren't abandoned. Instead, they were used in combination with digital tools. Stunt work, pyrotechnics, and real-world sets were used in scenes where Gerry fights or flees. In the airplane scene, practical set destruction, cabin implosion, bodies being flung, was shot physically, then enhanced digitally to depict the decompression and chaos. This careful integration means viewers rarely notice where practical ends and digital begins, a hallmark of effective VFX work. Pushpin, the realism is preserved because the effects serve story logic, not visual flamboyance. Globe with Meridians 6. Limitations and minor criticism. Though overall well-received, some moments, especially in early theatrical cuts, were criticized for slightly uncanny zombie movement in wide shots, too fast, insect-like. Some early CGI looked rubbery under scrutiny, especially in HD or slowed down. However, most audiences accepted these as stylistic choices, not technical flaws, and later versions, Blu-ray, streaming, improved some rendering fidelity. Microscope 7. Thematic role of VFX, more than just visuals. What makes World War Z's visual effects noteworthy isn't just their scale or quality, but how they reflect the themes of the film. The swarms are dehumanized, collective, relentless, mirroring societal collapse and mob behavior. The overwhelming CGI crowds simulate the loss of individuality, echoing the fear of losing control to something bigger, faster, and more chaotic. Pushpin, in this way, the CGI is not just visual, it's psychological and thematic. Trophy conclusion, a case study in purpose-driven visual effects. Aspect execution. Zombie swarms fully digital, highly choreographed, thematically resonant. Environmental CGI seamless cityscapes, ocean fleets, and wide-scale destruction. Practical versus digital balanced use of both for immersion and believability. Close-up creature effects physical performances enhanced digitally for nuance and fear. Weaknesses occasional unnatural motion, but minor and often masked by pacing. World War Z, 2013, stands as a benchmark in using digital visual effects not just for spectacle, but for storytelling, emotional tone, and thematic reinforcement. Its VFX elevate the narrative, immerse the viewer, and maintain realism even amidst large-scale fantasy. Would you like this section rewritten as a YouTube voiceover script with timestamps or visuals? I can also break it into short reel-style segments or add comparison with other zombie films' VFX for added value. World War Z, 2013. Set design and locations analysis. World War Z, directed by Marc Forster, is a globe-trotting apocalyptic thriller that hinges heavily on the authenticity of its locations and the realism of its production design. With a narrative that spans continents, from urban America to the Middle East and remote laboratories, the film's production design plays a crucial role in grounding the fantastical zombie outbreak in a world that feels disturbingly familiar. Cityscape at Dusk 1. Urban realism, the collapse of everyday life. The film opens in a bustling urban setting, Philadelphia, which was actually shot in Glasgow, Scotland, due to logistical convenience and architecture that mirrored East Coast US cities. The transformation was meticulous. Storefronts, signage, vehicles, and even traffic lights were redressed to resemble American infrastructure. Production design focused on gritty realism, familiar city streets suddenly overwhelmed by chaos, abandoned vehicles, broken windows, and panicked crowds. This setting establishes a stark contrast between normalcy and destruction, making the transition into chaos all the more terrifying. Pushpin by choosing a city that looks lived in and grounded, the film ensures viewers feel like the apocalypse is happening in their own backyard. Airplane #2. Evacuation zones and government facilities, controlled desperation. Once the outbreak begins, the set transitions to evacuation ships and military control centers, which were shot on real aircraft carriers like the USS Argus and recreated with meticulous set builds. The naval base environment reflects military order amidst panic, clean, sterile, and suffocating. Set designers used low lighting, cramped corridors, and metallic textures to convey emotional detachment and isolation. These settings underscore themes of control versus chaos, as humans attempt to impose order on a world unraveling. Pushpin the claustrophobic design contrasts sharply with the wide, chaotic urban scenes, showing how survival creates new, constrained environments. European Castle 3. Jerusalem Wall, grand scale and symbolic power. One of the film's most iconic sequences is set in Jerusalem, portrayed as a haven that has erected a giant wall to keep zombies out. These scenes were shot in Malta, particularly in the fortified city of Valletta and surrounding areas. The wall itself was a combination of massive practical sets and digital extensions. The interior streets were designed to reflect Middle Eastern architecture, stone alleys, religious symbols, and closely packed communities, giving a sense of historic place and spiritual irony. The wall becomes a character in itself, representing false security and the futility of isolationism when the infected breach it. Pushpin the location is not only visually striking but narratively symbolic, and the practical textures give it authenticity despite heavy CGI. 4. South Korean military base, eerie and atmospheric. In another sequence, the action shifts to a South Korean outpost in the rain, dark, foggy, and drenched in tension. These scenes were shot in the UK at disused military facilities and hangars, then dressed to mimic a damp, remote Korean installation. The production design leans into horror elements, flickering lights, shadowy hallways, dripping walls. It feels like a haunted house within a war zone, heightening suspense while hinting at the military's inability to control the outbreak. Pushpin this set is where the film dips into horror territory, evoking fear through spatial design and atmosphere. 5. WHO facility, science in isolation. The climax takes place in a World Health Organization lab in Wales, which was filmed at Swansea University's Singleton Hospital, then heavily modified. Cold, sterile corridors, biohazard labs, and sealed chambers evoke tension and scientific urgency. The facility is designed with sharp lines, glass panels, and narrow hallways, all of which increase anxiety during the final stealth sequence. This location offers a tonal shift, from global destruction to clinical problem-solving, emphasizing that science, not war, might save humanity. Pushpin this set is emotionally important. It frames the human mind as our last line of defense. Airplane #6. Plane interior, confined chaos. The airplane sequence, though brief, is another masterpiece of set design. A full interior of a commercial plane was built and placed on a gimbal to simulate real turbulence and destruction. As the infected break into the cabin, the plane turns into a bottleneck of fear, made effective by tight camera work and detailed cabin design. Every element, seats, luggage compartments, lighting, was practical, with CGI enhancements added for the explosion and decompression. Pushpin the tactile realism makes the chaos feel all the more terrifying and sudden. Globe showing Europe Africa 7. Authentic global travel feel, without excessive stylization. Though the story travels to several countries, the film avoids excessive stylization or visual cliches. Each location has unique architecture, clothing, language, and tone, yet feels like part of a consistent, believable world. Maintains a neutral visual color palette, grounding the fantasy in real-world sensibility. There's no romanticization of travel. Each place feels functional, lived in, and on the brink. Pushpin: this gives the film a documentary-style realism rarely seen in zombie thrillers. Conclusion: set design as a storytelling tool. Set, location, visual style, and purpose. Urban USA, Glasgow, chaotic realism. Shows the fall of everyday society. Naval evacuation ship sterile, tense, highlights institutional control. Jerusalem, Malta, historic and symbolic. Wall as a metaphor for false security. Korean base, UK, atmospheric horror, conveys hopelessness and fear. WHO facility, Wales, cold, clinical, shift from violence to science. Plane cabin, claustrophobic intensity, tactical realism in motion. The production design in World War Z isn't flashy, it's functional, immersive, and symbolic. Each set reinforces the emotional and thematic direction of the story, and the use of real-world locations over green screen stages gives the film a visceral authenticity that amplifies the viewer's connection to the chaos unfolding on screen. Would you like a version of this broken into video chapters or YouTube script segments for your channel facts and review? I can also provide visuals or cinematic references for thumbnail inspiration. World War Z, 2013. Dialogue and Script Analysis. The screenplay of World War Z, developed from Max Brooks' 2006 novel and rewritten multiple times by screenwriters including Matthew Michael Carnahan, Goddard, and Damon Lindelof, is marked by its functional, grounded, and tension-driven dialogue. Rather than opting for stylized or verbose exchanges, the script prioritizes urgency, realism, and clarity, aligning with the film's globe-spanning, survivalist narrative. Bullseye 1. Realism over rhetoric, a grounded approach. The dialogue in World War Z reflects the everyday language of professionals, soldiers, and civilians in crisis. It is intentionally minimalist, avoiding exposition-heavy monologues and instead relying on short, purposeful exchanges that reflect the character's stress and focus on survival. Brad Pitt's character, Gerry Lane, rarely speaks in grand speeches. His lines are measured, calm, and observational, reflecting his background as a UN investigator. Whether speaking to soldiers, scientists, or survivors, his tone remains emotionally contained, not because he lacks depth, but because the environment demands restraint. Pushpin: this naturalistic style adds to the film's documentary-like realism, grounding the extraordinary events in believable human reactions. Speech Balloon 2. Emotion beneath the surface, subtle but powerful. Though the dialogue may not be filled with theatrical flair, it delivers emotional weight through subtext. For instance, in early scenes with his family, Gerry uses gentle, concerned language, especially when calming his daughters. These quiet domestic moments contrast sharply with the chaos to come. During the rooftop evacuation call, his wife Karen says, "Don't send someone else. Come back to us." It's a plea that holds emotional gravity despite its simplicity. The understated writing allows viewers to project their own anxiety and emotion, making the experience more immersive. Pushpin: the emotion is often found between the lines, in what characters don't say, just as much as what they do. 3. Script efficiency, information delivered through action. The script excels at delivering exposition through action, rather than static dialogue. Instead of lengthy explanations about the zombie virus or the state of global governments, the script uses quick, informative conversations with military personnel or scientists. Visual storytelling, such as maps, body language, news reports, and surveillance footage, to supplement sparse dialogue. For instance, in the WHO lab scene, the plan to recover a pathogen is explained in a few tense lines, followed immediately by action. Pushpin: this efficiency keeps the pacing tight and the stakes high, reflecting the character's limited time and choices. Microphone #4. Standout lines, quiet but impactful moments. While World War Z is not a film of quotable one-liners, it features moments of dialogue that leave a lasting impression due to context and performance. Movement is life. Gerry's simple mantra captures the essence of survival in this fast-moving apocalypse. Every human being we save is one less zombie to fight. Spoken by a military officer, this line succinctly merges strategy and morality. Mother Nature is a serial killer. No one's better, more creative. A chilling line during the medical investigation, highlighting the film's underlying theme of nature versus humanity. Pushpin: these lines are not iconic for flash, but for how well they reflect the themes of fear, logic, and survival. Counterclockwise arrows 5. Rewrites and the third act overhaul. Notably, World War Z underwent major rewrites and reshoots, especially in its third act. The original ending was a massive battle in Russia, but it was replaced with a more intimate, tense stealth sequence in the WHO lab. Damon Lindelof and Goddard rewrote this portion to shift the tone from large-scale action to character-driven suspense. The dialogue in this sequence is almost silent, highlighting the strength of a script that knows when not to speak. Pushpin the rewrite favored psychological tension and character focus over spectacle, which enhanced the overall impact. 6. Global communication, language diversity and cultural nuance. Given the film's international scale, the script incorporates multilingual exchanges, including Hebrew, Korean, and Spanish. These choices add authenticity to each location visited. Avoid the Western-centric gaze by allowing local voices and languages to shape the story. Reinforce the idea that this is a truly global crisis, not just an American one. While translations are used when necessary, the filmmakers trust viewers to grasp the urgency and emotion even when words are unfamiliar. Pushpin this multicultural scripting choice enhances realism and respects global diversity. Writing hand # conclusion. A script that prioritizes function, not flourish. Aspect execution in the film. Realism in dialogue natural, restrained, believable in crisis situations. Emotional subtext strong emotional moments delivered subtly. Exposition delivery minimal, delivered through action and context. Standout lines sparse but memorable quotes tied to survival, morality, and nature. Multilingual dialogue culturally diverse, adding to authenticity. Rewritten ending focused on tension and intelligence over action, improving narrative tone. The dialogue and script in World War Z, 2013, may not be theatrical or poetic, but its subtlety, realism, and efficiency serve the story beautifully. It reflects a world unraveling in real time, where clarity, brevity, and emotional restraint are not only practical but essential for survival. World War Z, 2013. Genre execution analysis. World War Z, directed by Marc Forster, is broadly categorized as a zombie apocalypse action thriller. However, unlike many entries in the genre, it adopts a more globally scaled, politically conscious, and grounded approach to its storytelling. Its execution stands out by blending familiar tropes with inventive choices that redefine what a mainstream zombie film can look and feel like. 1. Subversion of traditional zombie tropes. Most zombie films tend to follow certain genre conventions: slow-moving undead, small survivor groups, excessive gore, moral collapse, and dark humor. World War Z actively subverts or reinvents many of these tropes. Fast-moving zombies. Unlike the shuffling undead of Romero's era or even early 2000s films like 28 Days Later, the zombies in World War Z are terrifyingly fast, operating like a swarm or hive. This creates a new kind of tension, less about creeping dread, more about sudden overwhelming force. Global scope. Traditional zombie films are often claustrophobic or localized: a mall, a farmhouse, a city. World War Z unfolds across multiple countries, showing how the outbreak affects global politics, culture, and infrastructure. Lack of gore. The film, aiming for a PG-13 rating, avoids the gruesome body horror often associated with zombie films. This choice emphasizes suspense and action over shock value and broadens its accessibility. Pushpin by focusing more on epidemic scale, fast zombies, and global consequences, the film distinguishes itself from horror-rooted zombie entries. Movie camera 2. Blending genres, action, suspense, drama. World War Z is not just a horror film. It strategically blends action, suspense, political thriller, science fiction, and human drama, creating a genre hybrid that appeals to a broader audience. Action. Set pieces such as the Jerusalem Wall breach, the South Korean airbase escape, and the airplane crash are executed with blockbuster-level intensity, complete with high-stakes choreography and practical effects. Suspense. The film's most memorable sequence may be its climactic stealth mission through the WHO lab, where silence and tension replace combat. It becomes almost a contained thriller, showcasing Forster's shift in genre tone from epic to intimate. Drama. The heart of the film lies in Gerry Lane's relationship with his family, which grounds the apocalyptic chaos in personal stakes. His constant communication with his wife and the recurring images of their daughters give the film emotional depth. Pushpin rather than leaning entirely into one genre, the film navigates multiple tones smoothly, making it feel expansive yet cohesive. 3. Fresh ideas and conceptual shifts. While the zombie genre is heavily saturated, World War Z introduces several fresh thematic and conceptual twists. Epidemiological framework. Unlike traditional zombie outbreaks attributed to vague supernatural causes, this film leans into science and medicine, treating the zombie infection like a pandemic. This scientific realism is rare and prescient, especially in a post-COVID world. Hero as an investigator, not a soldier, Gerry Lane is not a commando or action hero. He's a former UN field investigator, using observation, diplomacy, and deduction to survive. This gives the film an intellectual edge, favoring investigation over brute force. Viral camouflage. The concept that infected people ignore terminally ill humans adds a moral and biological layer to the story. It's a clever, novel twist that gives the ending a non-violent, science-based solution. Pushpin the genre is refreshed not with flashy gimmicks but with grounded, cerebral ideas and a methodical protagonist. Performing arts 4. Avoidance of humor and genre satire. Unlike many zombie films, such as Zombieland or Shaun of the Dead, World War Z largely avoids humor and self-awareness. There is very little comic relief, which aligns with the film's serious tone. This might disappoint fans of horror comedy or dark satire, but it helps maintain the tone of urgency and realism. The lack of camp or parody means the film treats the genre with dramatic respect, attempting to elevate it beyond cult status into mainstream, big-budget cinema. Pushpin this tonal commitment ensures a more immersive, adult-oriented experience, even if it forgoes lighter genre traditions. 5. Genre balance. A global thriller first, zombie film second. While zombies are central to the narrative, they are not the thematic focus. The film is more about global response, scientific discovery, and human resilience. Themes like overpopulation, political division, biological warfare, and migration are subtly woven into the narrative. The zombies become an allegory, a tool to explore societal breakdown and systemic failure, much like the original novel, albeit in a cinematic, action-packed format. Pushpin in essence, World War Z balances spectacle with substance, placing it closer to global disaster epics like Contagion or Children of Men than traditional horror. Whitehever checkmark conclusion. A genre film that elevates, reinvents, and expands. Genre element execution in the film. Zombie tropes reinvented with fast, swarm-like undead, minimal gore, scientific rather than supernatural origin. Action and suspense blockbuster-level set pieces balanced with intimate, tense sequences. Character-focused protagonist is intellectual, not violent. Emotional core is grounded in family. Innovation introduces scientific, geopolitical angles. Virus camouflage twist adds uniqueness. Tone serious and realistic, avoids comedy or satire. Genre position global pandemic thriller with zombies, rather than traditional horror or camp zombie fare. World War Z, 2013, may not satisfy all horror purists, but its ambition, narrative intelligence, and fresh perspective make it a unique contribution to the zombie genre. By subverting traditional expectations, it created a blockbuster template for apocalyptic cinema that prioritizes global scale, realism, and human ingenuity over gore and shock. Would you like this analysis formatted into a YouTube script or narrated breakdown for your facts and review channel? I can also prepare a summary chart for visual inclusion in your video. World War Z, 2013. Social and cultural commentary analysis. While World War Z, directed by Marc Forster, is outwardly a high-stakes zombie thriller, beneath its fast-paced global narrative lies a thoughtful exploration of contemporary geopolitical anxieties, global health crises, societal fragility, and human adaptability. The film may not wear its politics on its sleeve, but it reflects and critiques a variety of social and cultural themes that remain remarkably relevant. 1. Global pandemics and health crises, a chilling precursor. One of the film's most direct, and now eerily prophetic, forms of social commentary lies in its treatment of the zombie outbreak as a global pandemic. Long before COVID-19 brought the world to a standstill, World War Z captured rapid transmission across borders via modern travel, delayed response from governments and health institutions, breakdowns in communication, misinformation, and mismanagement. Unlike classic zombie films that focus on isolated survival, this film reflects how interconnected and vulnerable our global systems are, mirroring fears of real-life epidemics like SARS, H1N1, and later COVID-19. Pushpin it raises a quiet alarm about the inadequacy of global preparedness and the fragility of civilization in the face of biological disaster. Globe with Meridians 2. Cultural globalization and interconnectivity. Set across a globe-spanning canvas, from the US to South Korea, Israel, Wales, and the oceans between, World War Z emphasizes how no country is immune in an interconnected world. Every region's reaction to the outbreak is distinct: military lockdowns, quarantines, or mass migrations, offering a window into cultural, political, and systemic differences in crisis response. The film suggests that global cooperation is not just idealistic but essential for survival. Pushpin, by moving away from an America-centric lens, the film subtly critiques the idea of national exceptionalism in favor of collective responsibility. Shield #3. Governmental failure and militarization. Throughout the film, institutions of power, from the UN to military forces, are shown to be overwhelmed or poorly coordinated in the face of catastrophe. South Korea's base is overrun due to containment failure. Israel, despite initially succeeding with its wall strategy, collapses due to celebratory crowds attracting the infected. American leadership is displaced and relocated to naval fleets, detached from the civilian reality on the ground. While not overtly political, these moments reflect anxieties about bureaucratic ineffectiveness, militarized control, and the limits of state power. Pushpin, the film questions whether traditional institutions can withstand non-linear, fast-evolving threats in a hyperconnected era. 4. Science versus violence: the value of intelligence. A powerful underlying message of World War Z is the supremacy of science and observation over brute force. Gerry Lane survives and solves the crisis not by killing zombies, but by studying them, noticing patterns, deducing behavior, and identifying weaknesses. His solution, a viral camouflage based on terminal illnesses, is deeply rooted in human biology and epidemiology, not weaponry or domination. Pushpin, this promotes a cultural shift in the genre, from survival of the fittest nihilism to survival through intellect and compassion. 5. Immigration, walls and division: the case of Jerusalem. One of the film's most potent symbolic settings is Jerusalem, where Israel has preemptively built a massive wall to keep out the infected. Initially praised for its foresight, the wall fails when celebratory singing from inside draws in the zombies, who scale the structure like ants. This scene can be interpreted as a metaphor for the illusion of safety behind walls, be they political, national, or psychological. In a broader context, this critiques isolationist policies, border security debates, and the futility of containment in an interdependent world. Pushpin, it challenges the belief that any single nation can wall itself off from global crises, whether disease, conflict, or climate change. Family Man Woman Girl Boy 6. Family, sacrifice and human bonds. On a more intimate level, the film reflects universal social values, the importance of family, sacrifice, and moral duty in the face of collapse. Gerry's every decision is rooted in his desire to protect his wife and daughters, a relatable emotional anchor in an otherwise chaotic world. His sacrifices, such as risking exposure or leaving his family for the mission, reflect themes of selflessness, responsibility, and duty beyond personal survival. Pushpin, the story reinforces cultural values of human connection and the idea that our bonds, not just our instincts, are what define our survival. 7. Fear of the unknown, a universal paranoia. Finally, the film taps into existential fears prevalent in post-9/11 and post-economic crisis society. Sudden collapse of order, displacement from home and homeland, a force that spreads unseen and transforms loved ones into threats. The zombies become a metaphor not only for disease but for any threat that undermines certainty, be it terrorism, climate change, or institutional trust. Pushpin, it's a mirror held up to a civilization increasingly aware of how quickly normalcy can be appended. White have a checkmark conclusion, thoughtful reflection beneath the action. Social theme, how it's reflected in the film. Global pandemic anxiety, viral outbreak spreads rapidly. Governments fail to respond effectively. Cultural interconnectivity, international scope highlights shared vulnerability and need for cooperation. Political isolationism, Jerusalem's wall metaphor critiques belief in safety through division. Scientific rationality, heroism through observation and intellect rather than brute force. Family and sacrifice, emotional core based on familial responsibility amidst chaos. Systemic fragility, institutions overwhelmed by complexity and scale of threat. Existential threats, zombies symbolize modern fears, from terrorism to biological warfare. World War Z, 2013, may not lecture its audience, but through careful visual storytelling and narrative design, it delivers a compelling commentary on the modern human condition, from how we respond to crisis to what binds us in the face of collapse. It uses its genre not just to entertain, but to reflect the complex, chaotic world we inhabit. Would you like this transformed into a YouTube segment script for your facts and review channel? I can break it into hooks, narration-friendly chunks, and visual cue suggestions. World War Z, 2013. Social and cultural commentary, in depth. Though World War Z may be marketed as a zombie apocalypse thriller, the story is layered with complex socio-political, philosophical, and cultural subtexts. Through its multinational scope, the film dissects humanity's preparedness, or lack thereof, for crises, subtly criticizing our global systems and collective priorities while also highlighting our resilience and cooperation. 1. Pandemic anxiety and biological warfare metaphor. At its core, World War Z is a fictional pandemic scenario, but its allegorical depth parallels real-world disease outbreaks like SARS, Ebola, and later, COVID-19. Unseen threats. The infection spreads invisibly, and the infected change quickly, mirroring real-life fears about viruses that mutate and spread unpredictably. Global panic. Much like modern pandemics, the film showcases how panic spreads faster than the virus itself, leading to social unrest, political paralysis, and humanitarian collapse. Healthcare critique. There's a subtle but scathing critique of the world's fragmented health systems, especially in the way early responses fail or are delayed. Pushpin the Undead here symbolize not just death, but also the terrifying speed and unpredictability of modern diseases, an invisible enemy that cannot be negotiated with. 2. The futility of walls, a critique of isolationism. The scene where Israel has built a massive wall to keep the infected out is a direct metaphor. The wall represents isolationist ideology, the belief that a nation can shield itself from global crises. Its eventual collapse, caused by celebratory noise attracting zombies, serves as a visual metaphor for how no border is secure in a truly globalized world. From a cultural perspective, this scene criticizes real-world political movements advocating for border walls, anti-immigration policies, and nationalistic responses to global issues. Pushpin in short, the wall works, until humanity within lets their guard down, suggesting that division may delay disaster, but unity and foresight are the true defenses. Globe with Meridians 3. Globalization and the butterfly effect. The film moves across continents at breakneck speed: Korea, Israel, India, the US, and Wales. This deliberate global journey underlines how local events affect the entire world, how one country's failure becomes everyone's problem, that solutions require cooperation across cultures and borders. It's a post-9/11, post-financial crisis worldview, where the world is too interconnected to pretend that problems are regional. Pushpin Gerry Lane becomes a symbol of the global citizen, a diplomat, investigator, and humanitarian all in one, serving as a vehicle for cooperation over conflict. Shield #4. Bureaucratic collapse and trust deficit. The breakdown of government and institutional responses mirrors real-world skepticism. The UN is ineffective at coordinating a united strategy. Militaries are quick to act, slow to adapt, often using brute force with poor results. Civilian evacuation protocols are chaotic, reflecting institutional unpreparedness. The film critiques how governments may prioritize optics and power over preparation, failing to protect their citizens when it matters most. Pushpin this distrust in leadership mirrors real-life sentiments during global crises, be it natural disasters, wars, or health emergencies, where institutions falter under pressure. Science as salvation, a quiet championing of rationalism. Rather than depicting guns and violence as the ultimate saviors, World War Z chooses science and observation. Gerry's solution is born from curiosity, careful study, and pattern recognition. The zombie camouflage through injecting curable diseases is a highly intellectual solution, reinforcing trust in science, not brute force. This is a cultural shift in disaster films, where normally the hero is a soldier or rogue fighter. Here, he's a thoughtful observer, a former UN investigator. Pushpin the message: we will not shoot our way out of extinction. We must think, observe, and innovate. 6. Existential dread and societal collapse. Beyond physical destruction, World War Z explores what it means to lose control. Airports overrun, hospitals in chaos, families separated, mirror real fears of institutional collapse. News footage in the background shows widespread anarchy, suggesting that civilization is only one step away from collapse when structure fails. This reflects the fragile veneer of modern life and how quickly it can dissolve, especially in cities reliant on mass transit, constant communication, and structured supply chains. Pushpin, it taps into the primal fear of chaos and asks, what happens when the world's systems crash at once? #handshake #7. The individual versus the collective. Gerry Lane's journey is framed as personal. He just wants to protect his wife and children. But he becomes the key to humanity's survival. His choices are moral, not survivalist. He doesn't abandon people along the way, but helps them, even at risk to himself. His motivation is love, not vengeance or ambition. This offers a hopeful message. One individual, driven by empathy and duty, can tip the balance, an idea rooted in cultural heroism. Pushpin, this contrasts with many apocalypse films where selfishness triumphs. Here, selflessness leads to salvation. Microscope 8. Media, misinformation and communication breakdown. The film also offers subtle criticism of media overload and unreliable information. People receive news too late, or can't interpret it accurately. Rumors spread about the origin of the virus, and conspiracy theories abound. Governments and media fail to provide clear, accurate guidance. This reflects a world where information is abundant but trust is scarce, and the line between truth and fearmongering blurs during crisis. Pushpin, in today's digital age, where misinformation spreads like wildfire, the film serves as a warning about the cost of confusion. 9. Allegorical zombies, dehumanization and fear of the other. Zombies here are not just monsters, they are symbols. Mindless consumers, echoing capitalist critiques. Contagious outsiders, echoing immigration fears or xenophobia. Victims of an unseen system. The infected are us, and that's what makes it terrifying. A single bite turns a mother into a beast, a friend into a threat. This captures the fear of turning on ourselves, of what we become under pressure. Pushpin, the zombies can represent many cultural fears. The mob, the sick, the foreign, or even our darker instincts. Graduation cap final thoughts, cultural impact and legacy. World War Z is more than a blockbuster. It's a reflection of our deepest global anxieties, subtly embedded in a thrilling cinematic package. Commentary theme, how it's represented in the film. Global crisis unpreparedness, institutions fail to respond quickly or effectively. Pandemic parallels, viral spread mirrors real-world disease outbreaks. Anti-isolationism, walls fall, highlighting need for cooperation. Rationalism over militarism, science and intellect provide the solution, not brute force. Breakdown of trust, governments, media, and systems collapse or lose credibility. Moral responsibility, protagonists' empathy and ethics drive the story forward. Symbolic use of zombies represents societal fears, disease, conformity, loss of identity, xenophobia. If you'd like, I can now convert this breakdown into multiple YouTube script segments with hooks, narration pointers, and visual suggestions for your facts and review channel. Would you like me to start on that? World War Z, 2013. Audience engagement, in-depth analysis. World War Z is not just an action-packed zombie thriller. It's a carefully constructed cinematic experience designed to keep viewers emotionally invested from start to finish. Directed by Marc Forster and led by Brad Pitt, the film strikes a delicate balance between high-stakes tension, emotional realism, and global-scale storytelling, making it a compelling piece for both casual moviegoers and genre enthusiasts. Warning sign #1. Immediate tension and relatable stakes. The film wastes no time in drawing in the audience. The opening scenes place viewers in a familiar domestic setting, Gerry Lane, his wife, and children having breakfast, before chaos erupts in the streets. This sharp tonal shift from calm to panic engages the viewer with a sense of urgency and empathy. It's not just another zombie attack, it's a disruption of normal life, and viewers feel that deeply. Pushpin audiences quickly relate to the Lane family's confusion and desperation, grounding the action in personal stakes. Face screaming in fear too. Sustained suspense and unpredictability. The film maintains audience engagement through rapid pacing and globe-trotting storytelling. High-tension set pieces such as the rooftop rescue in Philadelphia, the Jerusalem Wall breach, the plane crash sequence, the WHO lab infiltration scene. Each sequence is structured to evoke intense suspense, pushing viewers to the edge of their seats with unpredictable threats and creative zombie dynamics, such as the piling swarm effect. Pushpin, these moments elicit visceral reactions, gasping, nail-biting, and a sense of helpless urgency, key components of thriller engagement. Red Heart #3. Emotional core, the family anchor. At the heart of the film lies Gerry Lane's motivation to protect his family. Scenes showing his wife and daughters waiting on an aircraft carrier evoke longing and anxiety. Phone calls between Gerry and his wife inject emotional tension amid